Hello, I'm Ashlee Howarth. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry here at Concordia University. And today I'm going to show you around my research lab in the new Applied Science Hub at Concordia. So today we're on the third floor of the Applied Science Hub, which is designated for the Center for Nanoscience Research. And along with me today is one of my master's students.
Hi everyone, my name is Paola Marino and I'm a master's student in the Howarth Research Group. I'm working on trying to synthesize metal organic frameworks, or MOFs, for biological applications. I'm also working on a few other projects, and another one I would like to speak about is actually synthesizing metal organic frameworks with the use of a bio-derived solvent, which is a green solvent.
The materials that we make in my research lab at Concordia are called metal organic frameworks. And this is just a 3D printed model of what a metal organic framework looks like. But metal organic frameworks are porous materials that are often crystalline and three-dimensional network structures. So in this structure here, you can actually see the pores. And the nice thing about MOFs is that we can tune the size, the shape, and the chemical composition of the pores in these materials for lots of different applications. And the applications that we're most interested in my research lab include things like wastewater remediation, sensing, catalysis, drug delivery, as well as more recently, some interest in battery applications.
We need to start off by weighing various regions involving the metal precursors, the linker, and the modulator, in addition to a suitable solvent. To begin, we must first tear a weighing paper onto digital balance. Once the weighing paper is teared, we can then begin weighing the starting materials for the metal organic frameworks. So the most common starting materials we use involve a metal salt, the organic linker, and the modulator. Once the desired amount of precursors are weighed out, we can then transfer them into a dram vial, which is then placed into the solvothermal oven. After placing the samples in the oven, we then leave our samples for 24 hours and up to 7 days.
So the purpose of heating the reaction mixture is multifold. First of all, we heat the reaction mixture to dissolve the metal salt and the organic linker. And second of all, we heat the reaction mixture to provide enough thermodynamic energy for the metal and linker bonds to form. But the synthesis of metal organic frameworks is also a dynamic process. So because these are large, three-dimensional, ordered crystalline materials, the process must be dynamic, which means that the bonds must be able to form, but they also must be allowed to break and reform and break and reform to allow for three-dimensional, ordered structure propagation. So we also provide heat to not only form the metal ligand bonds, but also to break those bonds and reform them and make the overall synthetic process dynamic.
So in order to remove the impurities from the synthesized metal organic frameworks, we perform a method known as solvent exchange. And in order to perform solvent exchange, we transfer the metal organic frameworks from the reaction vials into centrifuge tubes. Then we can place the centrifuge tubes in the centrifuge instrument. We then place the cap safely back on. And then after choosing a set amount of time and rotation speed, we then allow our MOFs to become pellets, and we can then remove the solvent and add fresh solvent. After synthesizing the metal organic frameworks and drying them, the metal organic frameworks vary in color based on the metal precursors that are used, and they appear as microcrystalline powders. The metal that is used to give the blue color is copper. For the other three metal organic frameworks, the metal that is used is zirconium. One way of characterizing the metal organic frameworks involves using a microscope. After our metal organic frameworks are dried, we can then use the microscope to analyze our MOF material. This involves looking at the MOF material underneath the microscope, and the microscope will be able to tell us information regarding the morphology of the particles that we have synthesized. And this information pertains to knowing the shape and size of the MOF material.
So now we've moved up to the fourth floor of the new Applied Science Hub, and right now we're in one of our shared materials characterization instrument rooms. In this instrument room, we have all of our equipment for activating and measuring the surface area and porosity of our metal organic frameworks. So this is our SmartVac Prep apparatus, which is basically just a high vacuum manifold that allows us to controllably heat our MOF samples under vacuum to remove any solvents or excess starting materials from the pores of our MOFs. This is our gas adsorption instrument, which we'll show you in a second, which is what we use to characterize the surface area and porosity of our MOFs using nitrogen gas as our adsorbate.
So with the use of our gas absorption instrument, we're able to place 3 samples at the same time. And the first step involves placing the isothermal jacket on the BET tube. Then I can securely fasten the BET tube containing the metal organic framework sample onto the instrument.
So when measuring the surface area and porosity of MOFs, we do the measurements at 77 Kelvin, which is the temperature of liquid nitrogen. And we do the measurements at this really low temperature because this is the temperature at which nitrogen gas condenses, hence why the liquid nitrogen is a liquid. At this low temperature where the nitrogen gas condenses, the nitrogen gas can easily stick to the surface of our metal organic framework. When the nitrogen gas interacts with the surfaces of our metal organic framework, it can form a nice uniform monolayer on the surface. And depending on how many molecules of nitrogen gas are required to form that monolayer, we can determine the surface area and also the porosity of our material. So kind of an overarching theme is that we're also trying to make all these metal organic frameworks that we make using biodegradable and more sustainable solvents.